Welcome, Carl.
Greetings, Michael. Super good I can't wait to hear where we're going to go today.
You can't wait to hear where we'll go today. Well, we're continuing the travel journey, right? So last podcast, you were asking me about the world of travel and, it's the world of travel and traveling around the world and all the speaking travel that I do these days. And so I kind of wanted to turn this back to you in the same way. I know you do a lot of travel as well for conferences, but I actually wanted to dig this more directly to you and what you do, which is this whole world of drawing, of Sharpies, of you pull out napkins and draw on Sharpies, and you've made a business out of this. So I'd love today to take a few minutes of understanding how that journey came about and what that creative process is for you, that you could sit down and just take these ideas and draw it up with a Sharpie. And, last week I was at CFP Board's headquarters for a meeting, and their napkins in their cafeteria are are Carl Richards drawings about financial planning. It's everywhere. So
yeah.
how did the Sharpie thing get started?
Yeah, that's a fun question. Yeah, so I'll try. What's really interesting about these stories, I think, is they're all made up, right? So I'll try to actually stick to the fact pattern and not make up some beautiful narrative, because it was all a giant accident, right? The truth of it is, I was sitting across the table, and I can remember who it was, Dave and Diane, two of my favorite people and best clients, and they're smart, successful people. And we were talking about some concept. I can't recall what, I wish I could, but I can't recall what the concept was. But there was something that they really needed to understand in order to make the decision they were trying to make. And again, they're super smart and successful. So the fact that I was just getting blank stares was a reflection of me, not them. So, and I thought I was pretty good at this, explaining stuff, but this was still early days, but I thought I was pretty good at it, and was getting nothing. And I hadn't ever done this before. It should be obvious to everybody, I have no art background. But I had never really, I wasn't a doodler, right? I didn't, all those things, I didn't do those things.
Okay.
But there was a whiteboard, and just out of an act of, it was actually desperation, an act of desperation. I stood up and I said, no, like this, right? And I drew, it was a circle and a square with some arrows. If I remember right, it was around the flow of money, cash flow. I can't remember what it was, but it was a circle, squares, arrows, nothing complex. And I remember distinctly, they were oh, right? I distinctly remember the feeling in the room.
It's that light bulb above head eureka moment, I've got it.
Yeah, and it was to me, it was that dramatic. Now I know to them it was probably just, oh, okay, that makes sense. But to me, that feeling, I was oh, that was cool. Can I do that again? And then the next couple weeks later, I was explaining something, and if I recall, it was around asset allocation. I was and I sort of drew it. You've seen those, we all know, the print out beautiful pie chart. Instead, yep. I drew it. And then I drew an arrow to we're going from this allocation to this allocation. And the person that I was meeting with left, and they called me later and said, hey, that thing that you drew on that piece of paper, would you mind scanning it to me and emailing it to me so I can show my spouse? And I had this experience where
because he didn't take the paper with him. You kept it because scrap paper at the end of the meeting. Yeah, he's
it was just a yellow pad or whatever. It wasn't a thing. And so I scanned it, sent it to him so he could show his spouse. And I remember when I saw it digitally, I thought, oh, I could send it to other people. Right? That was as simple as the thought was. Oh, I could send it to other people. So I kept doing those things. Like I kept thinking like, and then I would notice if anybody asked me the same question, if I answered the same phone, and we all, you know, all the listeners, viewers would relate to
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
Like,
we all get certain client questions from clients, same way,
right? Like,
over and over and over again.
yeah, based on the news cycle or whatever, like if anything was happening multiple, and I was like, oh, that's the third time somebody's asked me today. I bet there's other people who wondered about this question too. I'll write up what I said, and then I'll try and illustrate it real quickly with one single little drawing, and and so then I put it up on this website, and you know, named the website Behavior Gap, and like my mom and my sister were the only readers, and I've found out that my sister was lying, so it really like it was my mom. But I kept doing it, and then one day, uh, his name was Keith. I can't remember his last name, but another financial planner somewhere sent these to Ron Lieber
At
and
the
said,
New York
"Hey,
Times.
at the New York Times, hey, you'd really like these." And I have that email, and I've thanked him like a million times because he's changed this. Keith has changed my life. And then Ron said, "Hey, I love these. You know, would you mind doing a sort of a, I can't remember what he called it, like an experiment or something. You want to do it for a couple of days with us?" And I knew enough to say yes and figure things out later. And so then that like, so that's how they happened, like how they happened in terms of like creating them. We can talk about it, but that's how they happened. It was all like, I struggle to point to something that's repeatable, except for one thing, like playing in traffic, like not being scared to play in traffic is the only repeatable skill out of that, right? Because
Meaning just your clients had a question, an issue, and I said, well, I'm no artist, but like, let me just sketch this out and see if I can help connect what's going on for you. And that was the breakthrough moment that kicked it off. Like, what the hell? I'm not an artist, but I'm just going to try to draw this and see if I can get a better connection to these clients.
Yeah, in fact, maybe that's a good way to think about it. You know, rather than going down, we can go there if we want to in terms of like doing public work in the book and whatever. But if we just think like the advisor, there is something massively, and I just learned this again today. Like I hired a designer to do some work for me, and there was no images on the work, none of my images, and I sent it out, and I was like, this work is amazing, it's so great. I sent it out to people, and they're like, wait, where did you go? So I was like, well, wait, aren't we supposed to grow up at some point, like, and stop playing with crayons, like, and they're like, no. It's so I think what I keep learning and what I would encourage people to do, like, I don't care. You should look, do not tell me you're not an artist. Like, whatever, like, neither am I. We're not talking about an artist. There is something incredibly approachable. And people are impressed when you have command of the material enough that you can go, oh, kind of like this, right? And I think if you want to learn to do that, I think it's an amazing communication skill. When you look at the data around people, you know, the research around people who understand things visually, right? And it's like 85% or something, like visual representation enhances learning for like 85 or 90% of us.
Yep.
And then you look at the inverse of that, how many people are comfortable communicating visually, it's like 5%. So if you want, I would suggest everybody do it. And if you want, the best way I know to do it is Dan Rome's Napkin Academy, right? Like he teaches business people how to communicate effectively using handwriting.
Using napkins?
Yeah, essentially. And Dan's the master. Like I didn't know that I was doing a thing. One time
I didn't know this was a thing either. So like there's actually there's an academy for napkin drawing.
Yeah, I mean it's tongue in cheek, the Napkin Academy, but the drawing, like visual thinking, is a thing, right? And Dan Rome teaches people how to do it. And so I think it's called, if you Google Dan Rome, I'm almost positive. Napkin Academy.
We'll add a link in for the transcript on this, or for the show notes for people who are listening by podcast. If you want to see the Napkin Academy and learn to be a better visual artist communicator person, maybe we'll just do it with yellow pads and whiteboards because it's our industry. But we can pretend they're all napkins.
Yeah. And I think it does point to a bigger thing though, is visually communicating. I think our industry, I don't think our industry has to be among the worst at like design, right? Like nobody wants to open anything from our industry.
So what is the creative process look like as you've produced these over the years? I mean, is there like a tortured artist in there? Like for every napkin drawing we see, there's like 172 crumpled up ones that didn't come out right off in the corner. You're like, this one's not good, throw it aside. This one didn't come out, throw it aside. Or do you just kind of sit down like there's a thing in your head and just you drop it out and there it is, and boom, it's done?
Yeah, no, it's actually closer to the latter, right? Like I used to do them all on cardstock and Sharpie, and I would buy just reams of cardstock, and I would sit down, and this was always on, I can't remember what day. It seems like it was on Wednesday or Thursday when the deadline because the main forcing function was a deadline for the New York Times.
Right.
And it was weekly for 10 years. This month is 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So that's whatever that number is, 500 plus every week. So I'd sit down and I'd have the column written. Sometimes I'd have an image in my head and I would write the column to match that. But most of the time what's happening, and this I think is applicable whether you want to draw it or use a graphic illustrator. Most of the time what was happening is there'd be a column written. And then I'd think, okay, if I had to sum those 500 words up in a single image, and I only got one chance, I wanted people to think about one thing, what would be the logo or the icon of this idea? That's the way I would think about it. So I think of them as shortcuts into an idea. The good ones are shortcuts and souvenirs. So they're shortcuts into an idea, and they're souvenirs of the learning experience. And so I just think like 500 words, 250, 500 words, what's the one thing? So then I'd sit down and I would like play with things, and I would crumple up paper. And I used to I wouldn't crumple, I would just throw it try to make it like a Frisbee. And
because it's heavy card stocks. Like you can wing that pretty well. It's going to sail like a paper airplane.
Totally. So like in my studio, sometimes you'd come in and there would be stuff everywhere. Now I do it on an iPad with Apple Pencil, and so there's not quite the fun of just hucking stuff.
Because I didn't realize that. Like your Sharpies predate tablets because you've been doing this for 10 years. I think we only had tablets for like 8. So
yeah, and certainly Apple Pencil changed all of that for me. Like it was the first time I felt comfortable doing that. Before I tried every single stylus and just couldn't get anything that I liked. So yeah, that's the process, right? Just sit down, work. Some of them it was like boom, like one take Frank Sinatra, right? Like just nailed it. Other times it was hundreds of pieces of paper.
And where does the inspiration come from?
Well, it comes from the column, right? So like the words, because I've done this on other people's work too. Like I've illustrated other people's books. I've had other, there's been lots of projects like that. So those words, and then I just think, okay, so there's a couple things going on. One, I've got a set of constraints, and that's called my skill. And, like if I can't do it basically with a Sharpie and cardstock, right? Like there's no graphic design tools. I have none of those things. If I had been successful 10 years ago, I tried to download Adobe Illustrator and learn how to use it. And the little bar that said download time said like 8 hours or something. And I thought any software program that's going to take 8 hours, like I shouldn't touch. So from then I've embraced that constraint. A couple times I felt like I'm going to go learn to be a graphic designer or draw. And I've said, no. If you can't do it with a Sharpie. So that's where the inspiration comes from, is simple tools that I like Sharpie level resolution, right? So it's not a fine, 0.5 mechanical pencil.
Right.
It's like simple tools, broad strokes, chainsaw, right? Like that plus the words on the page become the inspiration.
And do you get critical of just your own art? Like, oh, that circle isn't round enough. That
you have no idea. Like, no, like people who have come in to like see the floor with all the paper, they're like, what was wrong with that one? I'm like, Oh, the circle is just a little off. No idea. It's ridiculous. Like nobody else cares. Nobody knows. There's so many of them that I want to fix. Oh, so many. Like we've been going through putting them all up on the sketch store because other people want to buy them. And I'm like, I got to fix that one. And the team here is like, no, it's part of what makes them great is they look like crap. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. So
They're
yeah,
authentic.
they are. They're what did yeah, somebody sent me a note the other day that said she used the word immediacy and approachable.
Well, I know.
So
I mean,
yeah,
there are advisors out there who, well, I mean, it said like CFP board uses this in their offices. I know there are advisors that have some of the popular sketches you've done. You know, financial planner is the thing between you and stupid. Some of those fun images and the value of what we do that hang as art in their offices, that hang as art in their conference rooms. Well, and I know, like, did you at one point you got to show this at an art gallery, right? You've done art gallery showings.
Yeah, look, you can't bring that up without me telling the story. I mean, I moved back to Park City, Utah, and I had taken a pottery class when I was 8 years old in the Kimball Art Center. And the Kimball Art Center is like, I consider it a jewel of Park City. And Park City is like, oh, cute little mountain town, but it punches way above its weight.
Yeah.
Like artistically, you know, the home of Sundance Film Festival and the Sundance Institute, all that stuff. They emailed me, and they didn't know that I lived there, and they didn't know that I grew up there. They emailed me and said, hey, we'd love to invite you to do a solo 50-piece 8-week show. And I was like, I replied and said, like, there's 3 words in this email that I don't understand. Solo, piece, and show. Like, I don't know. But yes. And so I said yes. I knew, you know, figure it out later, say yes. And then I called immediately one of my artist friends and said, hey, come over here, Nelson. Nelson, come to my office. Like, I don't know what to do. What does this even mean? And I was like, what could I do with 50 pieces? So I was drawing on I had an old weathered chalkboard that I loved in my old studio or my old office. And I was writing things, and he was like, you know what? Let's do old weathered chalkboards. Why don't you do old? And I was like, that's the craziest idea I've ever heard. Let's try it. So we did these old weathered chalkboards, and then we had to figure out how to price them. And I was like, well, how do you price things? And all my artist friends were like, I said, well, where's the book? Like, in my world, we know how to price things. Like, where's the comps? Like, there's no book. So I just decided to do it per square foot because everything else was per square foot.
You priced your art per square foot.
We didn't tell anybody that. Nobody will listen. Nobody will hear it now either. But, you know, so those chalkboards, I was like, oh, we'll do it this. And then I did the multiplication, you know, I did the calculation on the calculator, and it was like, that's $1,500. And I was like, oh, that's fine. And
what the hell?
I was like, whatever. And I didn't expect to sell anything. And it was one of their most successful shows. Like, we basically sold the whole show out. And I came in at opening night. There was these little tags next to all of them. It was an 8-week show. There's little tags. You've seen these at art places you've been to. And there was black dots on a bunch of them. And I was like, oh, that's sad. That must mean something like somebody didn't like them or something. And I went to ask the lady, and she was like, no, those are the ones that have sold already. So I was just like, what is going on? So anyway, so that's led to a California show, a show in London. I did a show in London in the old City Palace. That was amazing.
And does that mean like all the art critics come out and like grade your art? Do you get newspaper reviews on the art show? You're just pointing at all these. So the London show, I flew my dad over. We're building these big chalkboards. We had to find a studio space. We build these chalkboards. We do this. This was with Greg Davies. It was a whole big thing. It was really fun. And I thought we would hang these on the wall. Like, but this is, I can't remember what it's called. The Lord Manor's house. It's the oldest city. It's the only, like, the oldest city palace in London. I'm sure I'm getting some of these things wrong. Please don't send me bad emails. But it turns out you don't put nails in the wall in the Lord in the Egyptian hall. These walls predate nails.
Yeah. So they built walls. We're putting these things up, And the guys who were there to put them up, like there's a chalkboard, and behind it on the actual walls is like a Dutch master, right? Like a real. So the guys that are putting them up, I saw them laughing as they were putting them up, and I'm like, I went over and I was like, hey boys, they were all men. I said, hey boys, can you do me a favor? Just hang the art. Like we don't need any.
I'm nervous enough here. You don't actually have to laugh at it while you're hanging it.
Use the word art. I was like, just hang it, please. Like I don't need you guys laughing. So anyway, I have probably 50 more of those kind of like art world stories, but that's how it all happened. It's been super fun. And so now I'm doing 7 big canvases for an Australian firm tomorrow or the next day. So I do a lot of these now. The CFP board, did you see the canvases too?
No, just what they had out in their dining area, which is like you're even down to the napkins.
Yeah, that was a fun project. So anyway, super fun. But here's the point. Besides the creativity and the imposter syndrome stuff, which we'll dig into in future podcasts, the point to me is like, please, right? Like you can't make this too simple. And the ability to communicate effectively is enhanced if you have any inclination, right? Like just draw it out, right? Like, and then if you don't have any inclination, go through and think like, what's the main point and how am I emphasizing it, right?
Well, and to me, the other interesting kind of lesson reflection from this journey is just this effect. I think you said it more than once as like this is unfolded for you over the years, that sometimes when a weird, cool opportunity comes and you're not really sure if you should do it, like just say yes and figure it out later.
Totally.
You didn't set out to be an artist that does global art shows with the Sharpie. Like you drew a thing with the client and some stuff happened and you said yes, and some more stuff happened and you said yes, and you compound it 10 to 15 years later. And it's like, holy crap, look how far that went.
Yeah, there's that great Freakonomics column that they wrote where they did the little test on people were looking to make major life decisions, and they created a randomizer. Basically, they said this is a coin toss, and it had like a picture of a coin.
Yeah.
It was like they had people like major life decision, enter the life decision you're trying to make, flip a coin. And people were just looking for permission from a coin toss. And the conclusion of the whole study was this: basically, if you're thinking of doing something, just do it. And then particularly as tailwind develops. And I'm not very good at knowing where to go,
right?
But I'm kind of good at like catching some wind in the sail. Like, oh, and I'm only good at that because people hit me over the head with it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. The universe has a way of saying, no, this way, you stupid. So yeah, that's what's going on.
So I guess the one other takeaway as we wrap up for anyone who's listening to this, like if you've got your own weird version of this journey like Carl's been down and there's some weird leap moment and you're not sure, like Carl and I give you permission.
Yeah.
To permission say yes. Yeah, and figure it out later.
Amen.
Well, thank you, Carl.
Thanks, Michael. That was great.